Now it's time for the business for you on the programme. Losses on Wall Street as worries grow that the US economy is headed for recession. Traders really worrying that the Federal Reserve and other central banks might be willing to tip Western economies into recession as they try to extinguish inflation. As you can see, drops across the board, biggest one there on the Nasdaq. Let's have a look at the Asian markets as well. They've actually been rising in early trade there. The moods are more upbeat as traders prepare for an expected boost from China's reopening. Quite nice rises there, almost a percentage point there on the Hang Seng in Hong Kong. Now, the US streaming giant Netflix says it ended last year with more than 230 million global subscribers, beating analysts' expectations as hits such as Wednesday and Harry and Meghan enticed new viewers in. The company saying 2022 was a tough year with a pretty bumpy start but a brighter finish. Netflix also announcing that co-founder Reed Hastings is standing down as CEO, ending a 2-decade-long leadership that saw the company grow from a rent-by-mail DVD service to an entertainment juggernaut. Hastings ceding everyday control to his two longtime associates, the Chief Operating Officer Greg Peters and Ted Sarandos, who's been the face of Netflix in Hollywood and had already been named co-CEO. Now, we told you about the strikes here in Paris a little earlier on. It's made the news even over in Davos, in Switzerland, of course, for the World Economic Forum. France 24's business editor Kate Moody is there. She's been speaking with EY's managing partner Julie Teigland. Got her to react on a host of issues, including the planned pension reform. She also asked her if globalisation is dead or was in fact adapting.
You know, I think they'll keep it in mind in terms of doing their business plan and the cost of labor in those respective countries. And yes, that is an important factor in where countries do business and the attractiveness across Europe.
We're here in Davos where there's been a lot of talk about the economic outlook, about a possible recession, about the impact of inflation. How are business leaders feeling about the, say, year to come?
You know, I would say mixed. Generally, CEOs across, and we just did a study that showed they're not feeling incredibly optimistic. However, when I look across the business environment, actually, there are huge pockets of opportunity, and companies are grabbing those opportunities. Over 80% of the CEOs that we surveyed said that they're interested in looking at a transaction, which shows that optimism of what's out there to actually go after. I see pockets of growth across the world, including India, Middle East, just to name a few, and pockets of sectors that are doing extremely well, capitalizing on the momentum that we see in the market.
There's also a lot of talk here about globalization. It's sort of the very ethos of Davos. Is there a future for globalization, or is it dead, do you think?
Oh my gosh, that is the word of the day on the street in Davos, the death of globalization. Do you know that world trade is actually at its highest point ever in global history? Trade is going to continue, but globalization is being adapted. In the past, I would say pre-COVID times, we had a very linear assessment of what globalization was, right? It was all around offshoring and leveraging automation and driving efficiencies. I think companies are thinking much more thoughtful about how they do their business and their supply chain. They're combining concepts of friendshoring, of nearshoring, of de-risking those supply chains, and that's having an impact on globalization. Doesn't mean that we're not going to have global trade, doesn't mean that we're not going to leverage efficiencies, but we are going to do it with more purpose, more thoughtfulness, and a little bit of risk in the back of our minds. And we see that a top focus at boards, at companies, reassessing those supply chains exactly for that risk, no longer being linear, but multidimensional. And that's actually a positive movement. It's much more thoughtful. In that context, we will likely give up a little efficiency for the de-risking, and that's the trade-off that companies are making.
Leadership is also a huge part of this puzzle. You've been a prominent voice for more gender balance, more gender equality in the corporate world. Is there progress being made in recent years?
You know, we do see progress. We see progress even here at Davos in the attendees, the panels, but I would be lying to you if I said we've reached gender parity, and the recent studies show, a ridiculous 132 years. We see progress in the number of female business leaders. There's more to do at all levels, whether that be in politics or in business, to ensure that we've got equal representation. And we see business leaders and CEOs setting the right tone from the top to get there. Progress is glacial, but it's moving. And companies like EY are doing their best to help that move faster. I'm proud that we have 33% of our executive being women, and I'm confident if companies follow that, taking a good look at reducing unconscious bias, they'll see that there's fantastic women in their organization that are eligible for promotion and leadership positions.
Julie Teigland, thank you so much for joining us on France 24 today.
Kate Moody there sending that to us from Davos. Now then, in a bid to keep up with the rising cost of living, many motorists have converted their cars to bioethanol. Up until recently, well, it offered huge savings at the pump, but now the cost of this fuel is also on the rise. So is it worth it? James Mulholland reports.
It's a symbolic but significant limit. The price of bioethanol in France has risen above the €1 mark, hitting €1.13 per litre this week. The price of E85 fuel has soared since the beginning of the year, increasing 50% on January 2022, when it cost around 77 cents per litre. Bioethanol is produced from carbohydrates of sugar or starchy crops through fermentation. It is, therefore, a prime target of inflation.
As a whole, petrol distributors agree yearly supply contracts with producers of agricultural alcohol. The contracts for 2023 were agreed in October or November 2022, when the cost of food products like wheat, maize or beetroot were at their highest. Much like the cost of gas, which you need to produce E85.
In order to run on bioethanol, vehicles require the installation of a conversion kit, a process that was authorized by France in 2017. Since then, many have rushed to cash in on the cheaper fuel. Now, it's also hitting their pockets hard. It remains to be seen if E85 prices will stay at current levels, or if distributors will be able to renegotiate their contracts. Bioethanol is still much cheaper than unleaded or diesel fuels, which can cost from around €1.80 to over €2 per litre.